Okay, a proper good evening to you this time, ladies and gentlemen. Most of you know who Nakul Anand is. Most of you probably heard him speak at various industry fora, and you will know he is the master of the presentation. He talks about the industry, he talks about the future, he talks about tourism, and he talks extremely well. But if you know that, you will also know that the one subject Nakul Anand does not talk about is Nakul Anand. He's been famous, I think, within the industry for being the man who makes changes without making waves for himself. He's a man who's reluctant to talk about himself, a man who is, I think, too modest for his own good. So I'm going to change this around this time. I'm going to be slightly more aggressive than I usually am. I'm going to make a series of statements about what Nakul has done, and I'm going to invite him to agree or disagree with me. Let's start with this whole green thing. ITC has been known as a green chain for a long time, but nobody was sure what it meant. Did it just mean that you didn't wash our towels, that you didn't change our sheets? Until you took over, green, at least in my mind as somebody who didn't stay in ITC hotels that much till you took over, has been something that meant, was just a slogan. Now I notice there is sustainability, there's sustainability about all things. And in many ways, given what's happening in the rest of the world, you were ahead of the curve 20 years ago when you went from plain green to sustainability. So tell me a bit about it.
Thanks, Vir. I think sustainability was a part of the DNA of ITC, and I think I inherited that. I think the dilemma came when we were upgrading our hotels and we were getting into the luxury positioning. Yeah. And at that time, it was believed that green hotels cannot be luxury.
Right.
You've got to compromise the temperature. You cannot have a shower. You've got to throttle your water and so forth, etc. So the choice was now that ITC is sustainable and all about green, and hotels, we wanted to be luxury. What do you do? So we took the path less traveled, and we said, why can't the two coexist? And that's why we created responsible luxury. That's luxury without compromising sustainability, and sustainability without compromising luxury.
But you took it like further than everybody I know. Sustainability for most people means you recycle your water, etc. But you extend it to everything. Most notably, you took responsible luxury into food. For instance, you did meals. As anybody who's had lunch here will remember, no, if you have a lunch at a banquet or a conference, you're sleepy first session after lunch. I think ITC is the first change that changed that you had meals at conferences that didn't seem heavy, that didn't make you full. You changed that in terms of the breakfast buffets in your hotels. You had local grains, you had cold-pressed juices. You went out of your way. Now it's all very trendy to do all these new age grains, etc. But you went out of your way to be responsible even in food, which nobody had heard of then. How did that start?
So again, I think that as we explored responsible luxury further, we realized that green was only one part of it. It had to get into every part of the service design, every moment of truth, every touch point, etc. Food was one important touch point. Now, again, I get back to responsible luxury. I'm a traveler. I come to Bombay. I love a vada pav. I may not today have it on the streets because perhaps my stomach may not take it, etc. Yet I want to have it. So we created something called Local Love. What did we do? We took the local food. You could get a bori biryani, you could get a vada pav in Bombay, in the hotel. So what did this do? It enhanced the consumer experience. Secondly, if that wasn't there, I would have perhaps ordered maybe a smoked salmon, which perhaps flew from 5,000 miles, etc. In the process, at the end of Local Love, we had substantially enhanced consumer experience and reduced our footprint of purchase of food by nearly 80 kilometers. So that was responsible luxury, a win-win for both.
But also, I mean, this is not to do with responsibility, but you went further. I remember you had food Sherpas at your hotel. So if I went to Calcutta and I said I want to have a Calcutta biryani, a food Sherpa would give me 6 restaurants to go to and say, we'll find a car, you can go and you can try them, which was the opposite of most hotels, which concentrated on keeping you eating within the hotel. You were happy to let people go out, and you said, but we have our own version of biryani, try that if you want. So that was pretty courageous, wasn't it?
It was, and I think that people would believe that we're depriving them of something, and the concierge, and now converted into Sherpas, are not doing their job. Yeah. And yet we told them, come back and try our own. One may take leave of modesty. Yeah. The Sherpas had done a lot of work before we introduced this program because they had benchmarked against the best that there was in the city.
The other thing that intrigues me, and you referred to it partially, you said when we changed for luxury positioning now, I'm not sure you're going to like this, but for most of the time I knew ITC until you took over. It was a company that was created by defectors from ITDC and defectors from Oberoi's, most of them Punjabis. And it had a particular DNA which was part Oberoi, part ITDC, and no real culture of its own, and no real sense of luxury. After you take over, there's a determined push to make this a luxury chain, which of course we now accept. Was that difficult to do?
Not really. I think, as one would say, that one was blessed with a great team, and I think we all shared the passion together. We realized that we had to change, and we got into responsible luxury. We realized that we were not luxury enough. We did a program I still remember called Luxury Fast Forward, that how would we move towards every aspect. And I think all these things helped together, and but at the end of the day, we did realize that no luxury can succeed till your basics are not right. So we coined this phrase, brilliant basics and magic moments. We were only delivering magic moments, but the basics were failing. So you first had to, a guest will not give you if the basics have failed, right? So, and magic moments are the sprinkle dust that you sort of sprinkle on top of the brilliant basics.
Yeah, people say to me that you go to an ITC hotel, you go say to the Grand Chola or the Royal Bengal, and the marble is gleaming. And I always say to them that it's not an accident. Nakul Anand is a fanatic about numbers. There is a number that he measures how much the marble gleams, and there's a number, and they have to make sure it reaches that number. If you're in an ITC hotel, you will never hear the flush in the next room waking you up at night. And again, people say, oh, how do they manage that? The answer is that there is a number. He tests the volume and makes sure that flushes are below that number. That's true, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think I've got Anil, Atul, quite a few people who worked with me, Richa here, they'll say, here he goes again. But I'm of the firm belief that what gets measured gets managed. Everything is subjective otherwise, and it sort of demotivates people. Now, assume that Anil is the general manager and I walk into ITC Maurya and I see that the floor is not shiny. Yeah. I would tell him and he would perhaps look, it looks okay to me. But what gets measured gets managed. There was a way to measure the floor, the glossiness, similarly a way to measure the whiteness of the sheet, a way to measure the sound that you spoke about, the decibel levels, the lux levels, the light. So what gets measured gets managed. Those are the brilliant basics, and on this you create the magic moments.
So a lot of what happens in IT, you won't walk into a hotel room and find it's too dark, and you think if they've thought about it. Well, they've done more than that, right? There's a lux level and you can't do any more than that. So there is a lot of science to the art of hospitality.
Yes, I think for a long time, hoteliering, at least with us, it remained an art for a very long time. We should have got into a science. I think it's a blend, it's a perfect blend of both. It's a blend of science. As I again said, the basics are the science, the magic moments are the art.
I want to talk a bit about the hotels themselves. I mean, there's the Maurya, which is the great ITC hotel that started it all. The Chola, you could argue, came before, and the Mughal. But for me, the sort of key ITC hotels are the ones that were opened in this century. The Gardenia, the Grand Chola, the Royal Bengal, and the Grand Bharat. Have I missed out any? Those are the big ones, right? I thought the Gardenia was a particular challenge because you already had the Windsor Manor, which was an extremely successful hotel that celebrated the heritage and the history of Bangalore. If you were opening a second hotel, you had to make it different. So how did you make the Gardenia different? What was the thinking?
So we always had a philosophy, and this had been set, and I inherited this, that you'll be rooted in the soil. Yeah. Now, Windsor Manor had sort of rooted itself in the British culture that existed, the Victorian culture. Now came the challenge of Karnataka and Bangalore, and you're opening a second hotel. Yeah. You couldn't go back in time, you had to move forward. And then the next thing that comes to your mind is that Bangalore is a garden city. Yeah. How can I make it into a garden? And how do I bring the garden into the hotel? How do I bring the weather into the hotel? Yeah. That's how you differentiate it, by trying to create a totally different concept, yet at the same time the two run parallel to each other.
The Grand Chola actually fascinates me because I remember going there just before it had opened, and I saw the size of the guest rooms. I don't know how many of you have been. If you walk through that hotel, it is like floating in a sea of marble. It's just ultimate luxury, not just in bathroom sizes, in room sizes. And I wrote at the time that eventually all city hotels will be judged by before Chola and after Chola. It was a masterpiece, but one that required a huge amount of ambition. How did you conceive it?
I think we were fortunate to get a great piece of land. Hotels are built once. We always say that we leave this and have a model 2 and a phase 2, it never happens, right? So therefore we said that let's go ahead and let's build the largest hotel. You need to de-risk it by creating the largest banquet hall, etc. Some of the challenges we had, true to our ethos, we didn't want to lose personalization. We didn't want to get lost in a sea of marble. We worked around it, created 4 separate entrances so that the personalization enhances there. And a nice anecdote is that you spoke about marble. So the designer wanted only one particular type of marble. It was 1 million square feet of that marble. We had to buy a whole quarry.
How much? 1 million square feet
of that marble. And we had to buy a full quarry and ship it from Italy. And I went from number of quarries to see it with the designer, and then we decided.
You actually bought a quarry to build that hotel?
Bought the quarry and sort of,
Wow, okay.
Because she wanted the same marble, and it wasn't possible to get such marble.
So there is that attention to detail, and also the restaurants at the Chola. Again, you had some great ITC brands there, but you invented new brands. For instance, all of you know of ITC's reputation for Indian food, so I won't belabor that point. But there was Ottimo, which was, as far as I know, the first Indian-Italian restaurant, the first Italian restaurant in India to be built entirely around a kitchen where you can see the chef's work, where you can have pizza and pasta, but you can also have quite high-quality, proper Italian food. There was nothing in ITC's background that would suggest you would know how to do that. So how did you do it?
So I think firstly, a 600-room hotel needs a large variety of food. It needs a number of restaurants, a number of cuisines, etc. Number 2, the cuisine is good quality of cuisine, and you and I have spoken about this in the past, sort of gets you the goodwill of the local population, and they become your mouthpiece to go through. We had to deflect perception that we were a kebab and curry chain. You yourself have written
That's your phrase, not mine.
You yourself have written very often that we were a kebab and curry chain. We had
kebab and biryani.
Biryani, okay. I stand corrected. We had to deflect that perception. So we said, let's go for it. And that's why we went all out to get the Italian, we went to get the Chinese, and see what best we could do.
But you also took the hard way. I remember Edo, which is the Japanese restaurant, the Gardenia. I mean, people have opened Japanese restaurants before. But the way to do it, you go and find a chef, a celebrity chef, and you say, will you open a restaurant in India? He does everything for you. You guys didn't do that. You took the hard way. You sent your chefs to Japan to train. You got Super Potato to design this wonderful building for you. And you built the menu up brick by brick. And you succeeded to the extent that the city's Japanese community would flock there because it was authentic. Again, there was nothing in ITC's background that suggested you guys knew how to do that.
You know, one of our feelings has been by getting somebody out, he goes, the quality of the food changes, etc. It had to be more permanent in nature. It had to be more sustainable in nature. We were blessed by the fact that we had a great kitchen management training program. Some of our most successful restaurants have been opened by people who graduated from this and grown up, etc. So that's why we believed it's better to, even if you've got to spend 6 months or a year, send your own chefs outside, train them and bring them back. There'll be consistency. And they will not hesitate to impart that knowledge and share it so that the culture goes on.
You know, I've had this discussion with many CEOs of Indian hotel chains, and they always say, you send these guys out, you train them, then they come back to India and they leave. You weren't scared of that?
Not at all. Not
Really?
at all. Some would leave, of course, but I think there's a lot more about just looking for another job, I think.
All right. Let's move now to the Grand Bharat. I remember when you built it, some of you may have seen it, there was the ITC Classic Golf Course, which had been there for a while, and there was land. And I heard ITC was building a hotel. And I imagine people, I mean, hotels near golf courses are not new. You built a pretty standard hotel for people who want to do some kind of sport, play golf, do jogging. Instead, you built what was like a complete luxury, all-suite resort with villas, with private pools, with stuff like that. And I remember people telling me, this is just ahead of Gurgaon. Is this man mad? He's not building it in Udaipur. Why would anybody want to go there? And now it's what? One of the most successful hotels in India. So tell me, explain that whole idea, because how you persisted with it and how you made it work.
So firstly, we have 400 acres of land in the proximity of Delhi. It would be a waste just to leave it as a golf course, right? But rather than conceiving it as a golf course, and I'd love to correct Mr. Vir Sanghvi, this is a hotel with a golf course and a golf course with a hotel.
Well, the golf course came first.
Okay, may have come in that sequence,
all right, okay,
but that's how it may. Anyway, so I think that we've seen how the pandemic surged domestic tourism. People were shy to travel within India, and the North India, this part has a great feeder market in the whole of Punjab, Himachal, Haryana, Delhi itself. So for a 100-room hotel, no airfares to be paid for, drive down to it, etc. Great experience, 400 acres of land, enough activity that you've got to create experiences, which is the key differentiator today, etc. And God's been kind.
So hoteliers have told me that during the pandemic, you had the highest rates in that area. Is that true?
We did. Fortunately, that hotel was built that they were isolated. Each one was a suite, etc. And therefore, there was a method of isolation there. We had enough space to sort of spread out the food and beverage facilities so that people didn't have to, people who were shy of interacting with other people, etc. Social distancing was maintained.
And what, probably the first resort you built?
Yes.
As head of the company? The new one, the Royal Bengal, again, a Bangalore type situation. You have a beautiful hotel in the Shonar, designed by Kerry Hill, lots of water bodies. And next to it, you build this huge hotel, and people say, will he make it work? Won't they not go together? I mean, we have examples of it going together. The old Taj in Bombay and the new wing merged, even though they're very different properties. But you managed to create a huge hotel next to a smallish, single-story hotel and make the merger work to the extent that at least when it comes to food, you've changed the way Calcutta eats. It's been probably your most influential hotel in terms of the effect it's had on a city. Again, what surprised me about it was the daring of the conception. The fact that you were not scared to be imaginative, not scared to go really big. Did that come easily?
I think all my fellow hoteliers will agree here that supply creates its own demand. I mean, when you built the Grand Chola, they said that supply is going to go up by 50% or 40%, and occupancy is only 60%. That means occupancy will drop to 30%. It never works that way. Supply creates its own demand. You put in a larger banquet hall, it creates its own desk. A similar thing happened here. Calcutta was a great venue for conferences. You may have built a great... But I think the success that really worked, and that's why, so the challenge while this was on paper and before I even put it to the board was how are the two going to coexist? What's going to happen there? And let me tell you, with all fairness, there are some people who still prefer the ITC Shunar and don't like the Royal Bengal, right? And still prefer to stay there. There are people the other way around. So we said, how can I make 1 + 1 3? How do I position Royal Bengal without downgrading ITC Shunar? Choice number one, make it into one hotel, make it into two separate brands? No. So what we did was we positioned it as a complex. Right? This is the ITC complex in Calcutta, which is two experiences, the ITC Royal Bengal and the ITC Shunar. You have 18 outlets. You have 2 spas. You have 4 swimming pools. What else? So that's a great, that's a success that really worked.
You also are good now at turning hotels around, one of your own. I remember when I first did the Maratha, not far from here, it couldn't make up its mind whether it was an airport hotel or whether it was a luxury hotel. Now it's quite clearly a luxury hotel. It has no illusions about itself. And it set the model for many hotels that followed, including, say, the JW Marriott in Aerocity in Delhi, which is also unapologetically a luxury hotel. How did you make that distinction, and how did you make it stick?
I think that ITC, well, I think it was always built as a luxury hotel. The location just happens to be close to the airport. So I don't think, and I think
stayed there, Nakul. It was not very luxurious when it opened.
the number of luxury hotels that exist in this area are phenomenal. And this is, so I don't think it was really a challenge, but we were coming to Bombay after a long time. Sea Rock had been closed for a while, and ITC Grand Central hadn't come. Bombay was an important market. We had to build what we thought was the best in the given piece of land. Price of land was very expensive. So therefore, we really put in everything in design that we could possibly. We put in everything in food and beverage that we could. Create a Peshawari, create a Dakshin, create a Dampok, right? Create a coffee shop, create a Chinese. So I think the team worked to put just about everything that we had learned in our years of hoteliering to make this a success.
And the ITC Grand in Goa, some people who've read my articles will know that I referred to it quite often as the worst. Actually, I was here on this platform talking to Mark Oplamesian when I referred to it as the worst Park Hyatt in the world. But you've taken it over and you've turned it around. How difficult was that?
I think we've inherited some great bones there. It's a great hotel, absolutely. We're fortunate enough to get it. I don't think we could ever have got a hotel like that in Goa.
No, but these are hoteliers, so tell them, tell us all, how can you take a hotel that has the bones but is not really working? What is it that makes a hotel not just okay, but great? What in your experience is the key?
I think overnight the cuisine was changed. We brought in our own cuisine. We opened the Royal Afghan. The Goan cuisine always existed. The coffee shop was a strong brand as it was. We opened the kebabs and curries, which was there. brought in people, of course, they had to be. We offered everybody who was there, and there were some great people in that. They came in, but then we had to send a lot of trainers because each company, rightly or wrongly, has their own culture. We work in different ways, etc. Sent in our own people. I think Anil who's here was really, that time, the head of South, and he was put in charge.
Anil Chatta, who's somewhere in the audience, hiding, no doubt. Yeah, okay, go on, yeah. Yeah. Hello, Anil, where are you?
Even if he stands, I wonder whether I'll see him from here, Anil.
Yeah. So let's go back now to where we began. I've been trying to work out what it is that makes Nakul Anand special. I mean, the generation above yours had legends. There was Bicky Oberoi, there still is Bicky Oberoi. There was Ajit Kerkar, again, who, when he ran the Taj, created something out of nothing. In your generation, you're the only legend. You're the leading hotelier of our times. And yet, you never talk about yourself. You never reveal what it is. So let's try and pin you down. One of them, I think, is you mix art and science. Yes? I think that's one of the keys to what you do.
Absolutely.
That you have warm hospitality, but that is underpinned by science. The other is you take responsibility to mean much more than, say, recycling. You take it to be a philosophy that goes across the hotel. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
The third is that you take luxury to its height. That if you are going to be luxurious, don't be stingy, be daring, build huge rooms, build big bathrooms, buy an entire marble quarry, get the best architects in the world, build large hotels, try and do different things. Is that part of the success?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And another secret of your success, I think, which we haven't touched on, is you talk to people on anywhere in any hotel conference, you talk to ITC employees, and all hoteliers, and I don't think I'm giving you any secrets, are to an extent political, and there's a certain amount of bitching about their companies. There's much less bitching about ITC. There's much more loyalty. There's a much higher level of morale within ITC. There's much less people leaving and looking for other jobs. A lot of hotel companies I know, people do jobs and send in the day and send out CVs in the evening, hoping for other jobs. That doesn't happen so much in ITC, if it happens at all. How do you keep the team morale so strong? How do you make ITC a content organization?
I think it's again part of ITC's DNA, it's part of ITC's culture. I'm second generation ITC. I lost my father when I was 6, he was with ITC, and when ITC opened the hotels division, they sort of asked me, would I like to be interviewed for hotels division, etc. I think it is well understood, and I know it's cliche for everybody here, but people are a part of the product. They are the most important part of our product, both the customer and the associates even more. Right? And there are Harvard studies to say an X point increase in the employee satisfaction index leads to an X increase in guest satisfaction index and profits. There are plenty of such correlations. So I think and the only way you can enjoy work is to enjoy working with your people.
Yeah. Also, during the pandemic, and many hoteliers have said this to me, ITC stood by its employees, and you were...
Absolutely, absolutely.
You didn't sack people, you didn't do anything.
No.
Was that easy to do? Because you were under huge pressure in your bottom line.
It was, but I think this is the time that we had to sort of stand out, and we had to show it's in adversity that you are judged, isn't it?
Yeah. And you did this at all levels. I remember yesterday, there was a delegation of union people going to see you at the Maratha to thank you for everything you've done during the pandemic. This is true, right? I found this out from other people.
Yes, that's true.
That's true. Union did come and see
Very
you.
nice of them and very kind. The Mehta told me and Anil and said that we want to thank ITC for what they've done, and we promise to give you 5 times in return for what you have done for us.
So Richard Branson once told me in an interview that the problem with most companies in the service sector, particularly in the hospitality sector, is that they don't realize that unless your people are happy, they can't make your customers or your guests happy. That's pretty much your philosophy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah? We're at the end of our time. You have what? India's leading hoteliers here. You are the doyen of the industry. Is there a message you have for them for the years ahead?
No, I think it's a great industry. I think that as an industry, we've sort of made 1.4 billion people travel.
Yeah.
It's up to us to keep that flag flying. It's up to us to get people back, create experiences. It's up to us to bring the industry back to where it was pre-pandemic.
And are you optimistic that that will
Absolutely,
happen?
more than optimistic. I think the early signs are phenomenal, and I have great confidence in travel coming back very quickly. I think change is a constant and so is travel.
So when travel comes back, are there going to be more Indians willing to travel and pay high rates than there were before the pandemic?
Absolutely. I think one that many Indians who traveled during this pandemic have got used to paying prices which we deserve, right? It was unheard of earlier. They would not. And many of them never knew that there were such places. I remember somebody calling me up. There was a delegation that I had booked at one of the hotels in Gulmarg, and he calls me up, not in one of our hotels, and he calls me up and he says, look, that I never knew that such a place existed. So I said, what's happening? He says, look, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. The guy's still asking me what I want for dinner. And I take a flight and I go abroad somewhere. At 6 o'clock I have to have dinner because there's nothing else after that. Yeah. Right? And here the guy's still waiting to ask me what I want. And it's a half an hour flight away or 1 hour flight away. I'm looked after. I can sleep what I like. And the beauty is even better. So
I've always said that India's hotels are the best, not just because of the facilities, the hardware, but because Indian managers are usually better educated, have more discretion, think quickly on their feet, and make excellent hoteliers.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest sort of, the good thing that's happened in the pandemic is that people have been forced, if I can use that word, to expose themselves to India and have realized what the potential for India is. So I believe that if I took many people who could afford it, who took 2 holidays or 3 holidays abroad, would at least take 1 or 2 in India. And now say, let me explore the rest of India.
Okay, those are encouraging words to end the session on. I know Manav is going to come on. Before that, a big hand for Nakul Anand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vir. Thank you, Mr. Anand. You know, what a beautiful video, and I was sitting here for part of it and then at the back, and what a beautiful story. We're absolutely delighted to have you join us for this, for this function, and it's a great honor. And I know that when I came back to India, 25 years ago, I used to come to the Morel lobby, and used to be always standing in the corner, and the most well-dressed hotelier that I've ever come across, and it's really an honor today to have you with us. I think Vir has already done a great job of putting your story out there. So thank you for coming, and we'd like to honor you.
I'm going to keep this short, but I think this is more a vote of thanks that what I've received today, I think there are many claimants to it, many stakeholders to it. I'm only receiving it on behalf of many. And many of them are here today, and I'd just like to thank them. First of all, my family, Timzi, Arman, Karan, thank you for being here. Second, my colleagues. I have never stopped learning from you, both from my colleagues in ITC. Many of them are here. Many of my ex-colleagues are there. I see Sanjay Rai. I see many of my dear friends from whom I've learned a lot. Ajay Bakaya, Rajiv Kaul, all people from whom I've learned. So there are colleagues from ITC and there are colleagues from the industry. Each one of you I have continued to learn. And last but not the least, Manav. I've always admired coming here, always taken away something. And Vir, who in many ways has been a mentor. We've argued, we've had long discussions, but he's always guided me, and Vir, thank you for that. And thank you for making this, Manav, you and your team, and Vir, a very special evening. And Timzi, Arman, and Karan for coming down. God bless.
Thank you.